Britain's two most senior money men stood up today to deliver the country's latest rescue plan as they fight to stave off a dangerous slide back into recession.
I think there's every reason to be sombre. I mean, the return of COVID obviously is terrifically sad and difficult for the country.
The economic recovery has slowed, and the economic risks are skewed to the downside.
So bad is the picture, the Chancellor made a last-minute U-turn and is now extending the full furlough scheme until March. Britain is coursing towards a double dip. Instead of growth of 5.5%, as the bank had hoped, the economy is expected to have a 2% contraction in the last quarter. This will mean the UK is set to be a staggering 11% smaller than expected, almost double the devastation caused by the last recession.
If you look at our forecast, we think it's going to end up probably about 11% below where it was at the end of this year, where it was at the end of last. I mean, that's absolutely unprecedented. I have to be honest with you, that obviously the Bank of England's policies tend to operate on the economy as a whole. We're very concerned about people in the economy, and I'm very concerned about some of the consequences. But I have to recognise what our tools can do and where we hit the limits and where other tools are more appropriate.
Step forward the Chancellor.
We are dealing with a once-in-a-century event.
This his concession for flip-flopping to his Labour opposite number.
Given this significant uncertainty, a worsening economic backdrop, I have had to make rapid adjustments to our economic plans.
In what could be counted as a political win for our regional and devolved leaders, the Chancellor will now stump up an estimated £25 billion to extend furlough.
Today's announcement will give people and businesses up and down our country immense comfort over what will be a difficult winter.
But even with furlough extended, unemployment is now expected to soar to 7.75%. That's 1 in 12 workers in Britain without a job. At the same time, the number of people on furlough will double in November to 5.5 million. An extra £150 billion of new money was also printed to support this rescue, taking the total of so-called quantitative easing to an eye-watering £895 billion. That adds up to more than £32,000 for each British household. But in Leeds, where bars like this are shuttering for the lockdown, faith in policymakers is beginning to erode.
It's like, here we go again, and it's just very, very tough. And a lot of people do not realise that they just think, oh great, you're getting furlough from the government, isn't that great? No, we've still got to pay £150,000 towards the contributions for our team, and that goes straight to the government.
What's your biggest fear?
Biggest fear now for the business is not opening on 2nd of December, because we'll just be hemorrhaging cash. It can be, at times, a very dark place.
Are you angry with the government?
I'm just massively frustrated.
Today, there seemed to be a concession both from the bank and Treasury that it's been harder than expected to bring solace to the economy.
I wish I could say that every company was going to get through this and come out on the other side and prosper. I don't think we can say that, unfortunately. This shock is so big.
So more economic chill to come. And if the lockdown is extended, then the hopeful bounce back may quickly collapse, and we may need even more help from the guardians of our financial well-being.
Well, we're joined now by Torsten Bell, the Chief Executive of the Resolution Foundation think tank, who helped design the original furlough scheme. Torsten Bell, do you think the Chancellor's decision today was inevitable, or was it forced on him?
Well, thanks for having me, John. I mean, look, the story of this autumn is a wish that we were heading into a recovery, but a realisation that with the virus spreading again, economic tough times are here to stay. And what the Chancellor has done today is, as he has over several times over the last few months, accept that reality, U-turn and set us on a different course.
Do you think the Treasury would have hated this decision? I mean, it was the Chancellor himself who said, I don't think it's the right thing to do to keep extending furlough.
Well, it is a very, very big change of approach from the Treasury. Just 6 weeks ago, they were saying that they wanted to see only people supported who were in viable jobs, and that meant people that could work, actually do some work. And now what they're saying is not only is support available to firms that are actually closed, but actually this furlough scheme will be available to every firm in the economy and in every part of our country. So it is a total change in approach in a matter of a few weeks from the Treasury.
The Chancellor is arguing that his attitude to furlough is about being flexible. But is this flexibility perhaps a signal of lack of long-term planning?
Well, I think the Chancellor is right to say that the economic policy does need to reflect what's happening with the health policy. You need to make sure your economic policy moves in line with your moves to restrict the virus. And as we've found out over the last few months, the virus has returned much more strong than we thought. The problem is that we knew that was always going to be a very significant probability. The history of pandemics in this country in decades past, but even more recently in other countries, is that we can get second or even third waves of the virus, and we should have been carrying out that contingency planning, and we should have been much more clear about that, rather than being dragged to changes in policy as the virus gets out of control.
Now, the Prime Minister's been out today saying definitely the shutdown will stop on the 2nd of December. And yet the Chancellor speaks of taking this furlough scheme right through till March, suggests possibly it may not stop on the 2nd of December.
Well, look, whether or not something called the lockdown stops on the 2nd of December, what we all know is that severe restrictions are here to stay right the way through the winter. We're not here to just contain the virus for 4 weeks and then let it spread afterwards. So yes, maybe we'll see things like non-essential retail being allowed to open in December before Christmas, but I'll be very surprised if we see hospitality and leisure companies being able to reopen fully before Christmas comes. That seems like unlikely to happen. So it's understandable that the Chancellor is setting out policy that gets us right the way through the next few months. It also reflects the nature of the devolved United Kingdom. Our public health measures are taken by governments in Cardiff and in Edinburgh, and so we need a policy that works for the different timings and the different lengths of lockdowns that we're going to see in the different nations of this country.
How far have you been able to estimate the appalling impact of this awful disaster on working people?
Well, we're seeing absolutely catastrophic impacts. We're seeing that all right across the board, leaving aside even the health effects. Obviously, on the economic side, 1 in 5 of young people or people from ethnic minorities that were previously furloughed have already lost their jobs. So, the change today makes no difference to those people. And the Bank of England governor, who you were playing an interview with for just now, their forecasts are for unemployment to peak at over 2.5 million people in the middle of next year. So we're seeing, and that's a doubling of the unemployment rate we saw before this crisis. So this is a truly terrible effect. Obviously, we're all focused both on the health and the economic side, but it's really important to understand the depth of the crisis we're in.